I walked into my parents' driveway to find my younger sister, Chloe, sitting in the driver's seat of my brand new charcoal gray sedan, waving a set of keys at me with a smirk that told me she'd already won a war I didn't even know we were fighting. My father stood on the porch with his arms crossed, looking proud, while my mother beamed as if she'd just handed out a piece of candy instead of the title to a vehicle I had spent 3 years of overtime and missed vacations to afford. When I asked what was going on, my dad didn't even look me in the eye. He just said that Chloe needed it more for her new influencer lifestyle, and that since I was the successful one, I could just buy another. That was the moment something inside me didn't just snap. It solidified into a cold, hard resolve. I have to ask you all right now, would you have stayed quiet and let your family walk all over you? Or would you have done what I did and made sure they learned a lesson they'd never forget? Tell me, was I wrong for protecting what was legally mine, even if it meant leaving my own sister stranded? To understand how we got to that driveway, you have to understand the dynamic of the Miller household. I'm the oldest, the responsible one who worked 2 jobs through college and never asked for a dime. Chloe is 5 years younger, the miracle baby, who apparently never learned that the word no exists in the English language. For years, my parents have used my success as a bank for Chloe's failures. When she dropped out of her 3rd semester of beauty school, I was the one who lent her $3,000 for startup costs that actually went toward a trip to Cabo. When she got an apartment she couldn't afford, my parents pressured me into co-signing, only for me to end up paying the final 3 months of rent because she needed to find herself in Bali. But the car was different. This wasn't just a car, it was a 2024 top of the line sedan, my first ever major purchase that wasn't a used clunker. I had researched it for months, saved every penny, and finally driven it off the lot just 2 weeks prior. I lived in a city with terrible public transport, and this was my lifeline to my high-paying corporate job. The trouble started at Sunday dinner a week ago. Chloe had been complaining that her beat-up 2010 hatchback was ruining her aesthetic and making her look poor to her followers. My parents, who live on a fixed pension but somehow always find money for her, looked at me with that specific, heavy expectation in their eyes. My mom suggested, quite casually, that maybe I could let Chloe borrow my new car for her upcoming road trip to a creator convention. I said no. I said it clearly, firmly, and repeatedly. I told them the insurance didn't cover her, and that I didn't trust her track record with vehicles considering she'd totaled her last one texting while driving. They dropped it that night, or so I thought. What I didn't know was that my mother had swiped my spare key from my bag while I was helping my dad in the garden. For 3 days they plotted. They convinced themselves that since they raised me, they had a communal right to my assets. It's a twisted logic, right? The idea that because you gave birth to someone, you own their hard-earned property. 2 days before the driveway incident, I got a weird feeling. My dad had asked a lot of questions about the paperwork for the car, pretending to be interested in the financing details. Being the organized person I am, I told him the truth. I didn't finance it. I paid cash, and the title was already in my name, filed safely at my apartment. However, what I didn't tell him, and what saved my life, was that the very morning of that dinner, I had finalized a legal agreement with my business partner. We were restructuring our firm into an LLC, and as part of our capital contribution agreement, I had legally transferred the ownership of the vehicle to the business entity for tax purposes and liability protection. On paper, I didn't own that car anymore. Miller and Associates LLC did. I was just the primary authorized driver. My parents, in their rush to be fair to Chloe, didn't understand the difference between personal property and a corporate asset. So, back to the driveway, my dad handed Chloe the keys and told her to go ahead and pack her bags. When I protested, he told me to stop being selfish, and that family shares. He even had the audacity to say that if I tried to take the keys back, he'd kick me out of the Sunday dinner and disown me. He thought he had the ultimate leverage. He thought he was the patriarch making a just ruling, but he didn't realize he was handing his daughter the keys to a grand larceny charge. I stood there, watching her toss her designer bags into my pristine leather backseat, and I felt a strange sense of calm. I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I just pulled out my phone, so that's the situation I was in. My parents had effectively stolen my car to give it to my sister, and they were smug about it because they thought family trumped the law. Before I tell you how I handled the police and the absolute meltdown that followed at the police station, I want you to pause and comment below. What would you have done? Would you have let her take it just to keep the peace, or would you have pulled the trigger on the legal consequences? I really want to see your takes on this, because what happens next is where things get truly nuclear. I let her drive away. I stood there with my parents, and I actually smiled. My mom looked relieved, thinking I had finally seen reason. I even stayed for dinner. I sat there, eating my mom's pot roast, while they talked about how grateful Chloe was and how this would be so good for her brand. Meanwhile, under the table, I was texting my business partner and the GPS tracking service associated with the car's corporate registration. I waited exactly 2 hours, enough time for Chloe to get 2 towns over, right onto the main interstate. Then I placed the call. I didn't call as a disgruntled brother. I called as the managing member of Miller and Associates LLC to report a corporate vehicle as stolen. I provided the VIN, the GPS coordinates, and the name of the unauthorized driver. The police caught up to her at a gas station 60 miles away. Because the car was registered to a business and reported stolen by the legal owner, the corporation, it wasn't treated as a family dispute. It was treated as a felony. Chloe, being Chloe, decided to get sassy with the officers. She told them her parents gave her the car and that the owner was her brother, so it was fine. When they ran the plates and the registration, it showed the LLC. When they called me to verify, I stayed completely professional. I told the officer that no one named Chloe Miller was authorized to operate that vehicle and that I wished to press charges on behalf of the company. My phone started blowing up around 11:00 p.m. It was my father, screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. He was at the precinct, and Chloe was in a holding cell, hysterical. He demanded I come down there and fix this immediately. He told me I was a monster for calling the cops on my own flesh and blood. I told him I'd be there in 20 minutes. When I walked into that station, the air was thick with tension. My mother was weeping in the lobby, and my father looked like he wanted to swing at me. He started yelling that I needed to tell the police it was a misunderstanding. I looked at him, then at the officer behind the desk, and I said, it wasn't a misunderstanding. My father took property that didn't belong to him and gave it to someone who didn't have the right to use it. That's theft. The fallout was catastrophic. To get the charges dropped, I made my parents sign a notarized confession of what they'd done, which I kept as insurance so they could never claim I was the aggressor to the rest of our extended family. I also made Chloe sign a promissory note for the rental value of the car for the time she had it, plus the cost of the detailing I had to get done because she'd spilled a latte on the passenger seat. My parents haven't spoken to me in 3 months, and honestly, it's been the most peaceful 3 months of my life. Chloe had to move back into their basement because she lost her influence. After her followers found out, she was arrested for grand theft auto. They tried to make me the villain in the family group chat, but the moment I posted the video of them handing her the keys while I protested, everyone went silent. They realized I wasn't the selfish one. I was just the one who finally stopped paying the brat tax. In the end, I learned that blood might be thicker than water, but a legal contract is stronger than both. You can't let people, even family, use your hard work as a floor mat just because they feel entitled to it. If I hadn't stood my ground, Chloe would still be driving my car, and my parents would be looking for the next thing of mine to give her. It's a tough lesson to learn, but sometimes you have to burn a bridge to keep the fire from spreading to your own house. Like this video if you were on my side and think my parents got exactly what they deserved. Subscribe for more stories like this where the responsible kid finally wins, and please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Do you think I should ever forgive them, or is the bridge burned for good? I'll see you all in the next story.